Once we remove the internals from the canister, we can start to look for areas on the sprinkler that will make it work correctly and in some cases make it not work correctly. In this particular case, I want to show you that this particular product on the right would not reverse correctly. And the reason behind that has to do with this trip tab area. And I'm going to move the trip tab up in the full circle position so that we can focus in on the specific little area of this tripping mechanism. And we can see on a known good example here that when we trip it, it actually clears this post and will allow it to reverse correctly. On this product, the suspect product, when I try to do that, it's locked in position and it cannot move. So that was one of the reasons why it didn't work. And we're going to see if we can fix this by actually forcing it back into the position by moving that tab into the correct position. You can see I levered it back into position and now it has that free movement just like the other known working product did. So just by taking the screwdriver and forcing that over center, now I have free movement of this and it now should reverse correctly. So that was one of the things that we want to see when you take it out of the canister. You can see things that normally you can't see once it's in the canister. So knowing that, now I'm going to show you a couple different areas here to look for that potentially can make the product work incorrectly and not reverse. The first thing we're going to focus on is this return spring. You'll see that it's wrapped starting at the top counterclockwise around, and the first thing you're going to notice here is at the end of that spring is free. You can see right in this area right here that it hasn't been connected correctly. There appears to be a little area here that it's supposed to be connected to, but that's not correct. It's a guide in which by aligning that hook on the product and moving that hook over top of the dog, or the paw as we call it, and then pushing it into the correct position, as you can see in this example, that there's a small hole in the paw and a small amount of a clearance that hook goes in there. Now it has adequate amount of spring pressure that it reverses correctly, and it has a real good snapback feature of that spring. And that's the normal position that you would see it in. So if your sprinkler doesn't reverse or doesn't act like it's working correctly, check that spring in that location of that hook and correct it. If you have high pressure, it's recommended that you use this higher step so that you get added spring pressure. So again, you just compress the spring, pull it out, and hook it up on the higher end of the tab, just like so. And I overdid it a little bit, but you can see that now it's got a higher spring rate and it takes a little bit more to push it out of the way. Under normal conditions, we're going to leave it in that one position and that should be fine. You can see that I moved it into the correct position now. And for higher pressures, that allows the spring to compress a little bit more. And you know, that's a tip that you can use. Under most conditions, we're going to put it back down in this low position here. And that's going to be normal operating pressures. The next thing we're going to look for here are these little adjustment tabs. We know that when it's in full circle, we remove this, or we move the tab in the upward position, and it's always going to go in the same direction all the time. But in order for it to reverse, this little tab has to interface with these little spring tabs. And when it reverses, you can see that it hits the tab on one side and it hits it on the other. So you're going from a clockwise to a counterclockwise, right arc, left arc position. Now many times the product will stop on the right side, so it's transitioning from a clockwise to a counterclockwise position. And that would be this tab that's located on the left right here. That controls the right border stop point. You can see that in this position, the lever and the spring are up on the upper portion, almost midpoint, so you don't have a lot of leverage there. So if you experience this, the best thing to do is to move the springs 180 degrees and get the tab to interface on the right at the lowest position using the fullest amount of lever and leverage, so that when it gets to that right position, it clicks down on the lower portion of it, and on the left portion it's still going to be a little bit higher, but we don't experience as many issues with the left border as we do the right border. So the trick is to get this spring in the lowest contact area of this lever to allow leverage to occur, and that will get the product to work much better and reverse on the right side.